Hello and welcome to On the Lens. Once again, we are back and today taking a look at the defense side of the ball. Another linebacker after taking a look at Scooby Wright, and our impressions we weren't impressed. We're going to look at another one of the top linebackers in this class, someone who has received heavy praise from guys like Daniel Jeremiah and Matt Miller, who have compared him, so he has the potential to be Patrick Willis-like. No, that doesn't mean he'll play for the 49ers and retire early, but talent-wise, that's a high comparison. So we'll flip over. Charles, first, what were your initial impressions of Jaylon Smith before we get into watching his game today versus Michigan?
I thought he was really impressive. He was all over the field making tackles. He was really disruptive in the run and pass game. He's only a true sophomore, or he just finished his true sophomore season, but even at this point, he doesn't have that many critical flaws in his game that will prevent him from being a stud at the next level. He really just pops off the film. He's all over the place. So I'm excited to take a closer look at him with you guys.
And Derek, what about you?
Jaylon Smith is the only. I've been doing this for 3-4 years now. The only linebacker I could compare that was maybe as good as a prospect as Jaylon Smith was C.J. Mosley. But Jaylon Smith is like the perfect blend of athleticism and understanding his assignments and being instinctual and fighting to get to the ball and shooting gaps and things like that. It's just that you see a lot of linebackers are either really athletic and then they don't know their assignments that well, or they're very good with their assignments, but maybe they're not athletic enough to complete the play. Jaylon Smith excels at both. So I think, like Charles was saying, it's really tough to try to find holes in his game that's going to hold him back from being really good.
And obviously, we'll be watching the Michigan game today, but one thing that stood out just from NFL media is Daniel Jeremiah. He described Smith's game, again, true sophomore, for Stanford as a teaching tape, thing you'd show to other linebackers, teaching them the right things to do. So for a college sophomore to have that type of tape, that's all right. So before we get into this game, Charles, going back to you, what are some things to look out for?
First of all, his overall athleticism, speed, ability to reach his zone landmarks and break on the ball. One thing you might want to watch out for. Sometimes he gets stuck on bigger blockers sometimes, but he's still a young kid. I read somewhere, by the time if he declares for the draft next year, he'll only be 20 years old by the time he starts his rookie year. So he's still a young guy, still growing into his body. But there's a lot to like overall.
Anything else for you, Derek, that you want to harp on before you get into the game?
Not really. I mean, Charles pretty much said it all. Just really look out for how well he's able to, if he sees something, to click and close on it, not just mentally, but be able to get there physically.
Excellent. So let's jump into the game. Jaylon Smith versus Michigan from last season.
I know the big thing with him versus Miles Jack, people are trying to compare and figure out which one is best, but I'm not really sure they play the same position. I see Jaylon Smith playing a will position, like a weak side linebacker, whereas I think Jack, you kind of stick him in the middle, and he's going to be able to do more from there.
Yeah, that's one of the few bad plays he has in this game. He just kind of missed a tackle there.
Yeah. Which is normally pretty unlike him. And I mean, he doesn't blow up either of his blockers there, but he holds two blockers out near the perimeter and forces the runner to kind of dance around a bit. And it still went for a big game, but I don't think that's a play you can really blame on him. I think he did just about all he could do, unless he absolutely blows up the blockers, but I wouldn't expect someone to do that.
This is a great play. Note he sees the alley that fills that opens up between the two blockers on that screen right there, and just fills it immediately and brings him down for like a 1 or 2 yard gain.
I remember this was, yeah, one of the only. I think it would have been nice to see him release a little bit sooner and not give the running back the leverage to get behind him so easily. I think he just got maybe a little too aggressive, thinking he could get to the quarterback, or maybe just thinking for too long that was. Yeah, he just doesn't see the guy coming around.
Yeah, but even then, like you can see his change of direction ability and athleticism to even like keep up right there. So
Yeah,
like
exactly.
if he doesn't rush as hard upfield, he's probably knocking that pass down. And that's just like an instinct thing that'll come over time.
hmm for most linebackers, this running back's just kind of gone. I mean, he makes the tackle downfield, which is a negative. It's a negative play. He still obviously could have made a much better play on this, but for a lot more linebackers, that he's probably getting a lot farther down the field than that. I've noticed his drops in coverage are very smooth and fluid, and he seems to have a very good understanding of where he's going and that he has to get to a certain landmark in time to make sure that the quarterback's not going to get a pass over his head.
Yep. And this is Gardner. He was a former wide receiver at Michigan, so to see this like get to the landmark and then closing speed before he gets to the first down, that's
hmm
really impressive play right there.
Yeah, Jaylon Smith is a really freaky athlete. Like, someone his size shouldn't really move the way he does, which is really, he's just like a scary dude. And that's one of the things I know, I think it was in Tepper's book, and maybe Stoner's talked about it. Linemen aren't going to be scared of how big a linebacker is because the lineman's always going to be bigger. They're going to be scared about how quick you can get around them and beat them to their landmarks. And I think that's what makes Jaylon Smith so good is that he's very good at both of those things.
Yep. Yeah. And there, yeah, he gets stuck sometimes on some bigger blockers,
Yeah.
but I mean, he's only 19, so he's still growing into his body.
And I think I mean, not that weak side linebackers should suck against taking on blockers, but you have to understand that a weak side linebacker, the way he's going to beat most linemen most of the time is by beating them to their spot, not wasting movement, and just having very good acceleration. And that was even the case with C.J. Mosley. C.J. Mosley wasn't the greatest at taking out blockers, but he was so good at beating them to their spot and
Yep.
finding ways around them that he didn't have to be that great of a block shedder. Like, honestly, we really overrate how well guys shed blocks because, like, sure, it's nice to have, but like if you're having to see a guy shed blocks so many times, there's a problem because he needs to find ways to avoid blockers. A lot of these coverage plays are kind of hard to dissect from him because it doesn't, other than really that like one running back where he kind of leaked out of the backfield, he's not like all these coverage plays aren't really going to him at all.
Yeah.
I think as good as his change of direction is, he's definitely gonna. I think he's gonna be. better suited to play as a zone uh, defender as opposed to having to, to play man up maybe on a slot receiver or something. Not that I don't think he can, but I think if you ask him to get to a spot quickly, he's going to be able to do a better job at that. I
And
mean,
that was a great
then
play
after
right
that,
there.
yeah, that was a really good play.
So he drops back to the spot where he needs to be, and accelerates right on Funchess and knocks the ball down. Great. That's like textbook
That's like
linebacker
super
play.
closing speed.
What do you think? You think he can run like a 4.4?
Um, I mean, like I don't know, man. Like he could probably hit high 4.4s. Like, and I know like people say that on TV all the time. Like you'll hear the announcers say, "Oh, he has 4.4 speed," but I think in the case of Jaylon Smith, like he actually really moves like that way. Like he moves like a high-end running back.
Yeah. What I like about Smith too is that he stays in this gap as they move down, like as they move across the field.
Mhm.
Like his gap discipline's really good. He's always in his run fits and where he needs to be.
That play I thought was just average. I think he did a solid job at like still keeping his assignment, but I think it would have been nicer to see him because it looked like the running back was going to be forced through that gap, so it would have been nice to see him kind of try to bypass the lineman and just shoot it.
Yeah.
At the same time, it wasn't really a negative play. Um, it was just there was a little bit of good and a little bit of bad out of that play, so it's kind of hard to like it just like and I think maybe that's with him. It's just going to come from age. Like he's going to understand when he can shoot some of these gaps. Like just playing more and understanding certain situations are going to call for him to do certain things, and I think he's very good at that for the most part. But it'd be nice to see it, in situations like that. And then that was he didn't even want to deal with the blocker there. That was nice.
Yeah.
And Smith's 40 time coming out of high school, that was clocked a 4.4. 4.44.
I mean, with those high school ones, they're always,
They're always fudged a little bit.
but still, I mean, if he's, let's say he ran a 4.56 coming out of high school. If he grows out of that 17, 18-year-old body for when he's 20, 21, chances are he's going to be able to hit high 4.4s if he's training the right way. See, I think there you saw the receiver kind of or the tight end run over that left hash, and I think he was deep enough to where it made the quarterback uncomfortable with. This might be the same play. It made the quarterback uncomfortable with trying to throw over him.
Yeah. He's really fluid and like getting to his drops.
Yeah.
He's really impressive in coverage.
I like how quickly he's able to recognize that the quarterback's, you know, I mean, he stays long enough to where maybe the quarterback's not going to be able to make some like panic jittery throw at the end off his feet. He makes sure the quarterback is running for sure, and
Hmm.
once he does that, he uh, attacks him.
And
Because I'm not sure number 98 there is chasing him down.
and open field tackling, that's kind of an underrated trait. Like it's a lot more difficult than it seems. And he
Mm-hmm.
seems to be able to do it pretty naturally. And this is just a fantastic.
That's an outstanding play.
If he's got a gap that wide open in the offensive line and he shoots it, he's going to get there every single time.
Mm-hmm. And he doesn't waste any time seeing that it's open and taking it.
No wasted movements.
Exactly. He sees it right there that his guy gets caught up on what looked like either that right tackle or that right guard and just shoots it immediately.
I love that play.
I think like Ben compared him to Levante David or something, and I feel like that's pretty spot on.
Yeah.
See, I think he did a very good job in coverage here because you see he moves out wide to that opposite hash to make
Hmm.
sure that uh, this guy running over him, the quarterback's not comfortable throwing over Smith.
Exactly.
But then he works back to the guy over the middle, in the middle of the hashes, so that he's not open either. Um, Quarterback ends up trying to force that throw over the middle because there was no really window to throw it to, and he had to throw it late. Safety's able to come up and make the interception.
I saw an article knocking. It was like a scouting report for Jaylon Smith. And one of the weaknesses they had was his stance. Like they were knocking him on like how he sets in his stance.
Who cares?
Yeah, like it doesn't even make sense.
Unless it's like god awful and he's like sitting back on his heels the whole time, you're looking for something to get worked up about. Because, I mean, to me, I've never noticed his stance being some sort of issue.
No, he's all over the field.
Exactly. I mean, as a weak side linebacker, at least he's not afraid of contact. Like
Yeah,
I think we saw with Ryan Shazier. Shazier was not only like bad against contact, he was afraid to touch anyone. And if anyone got a hand on him, play was pretty much over. And it's not that like whenever Jaylon Smith makes contact, he's making some great impact on the play, but you like to at least see that he has this demeanor to where he's going to want to hit dudes and at
hmm
least try to work on, um, you know, being more physical with guys and dealing with them that way.
that's a great play right there.
Yep, getting into his gap, forcing the blocker into it so the runner has nowhere to go. That was perfect.
And just like you said, he's not afraid of contact because in the NFL, like those fullbacks are coming. Like when you fill that hole, so it's
Hmm.
good to see him not shy away from contact and fill the hole strong.
Hmm.
And it kind of gives the other defenders time to come over and make that tackle for a loss.
Exactly, because if he doesn't hit that tight end is hard, and maybe the tight end forces Smith off of his spot by maybe just a foot and a half. That running back probably has enough room to make it through that lane and get a couple of yards.
Yeah,
And do you notice on this play? Do you notice how off the snap Smith is immediately moving to the side of the ball and upfield?
hmm
I think that's such a key trait, especially for someone his age. I mean, ball snap, he's already making moves to the left and to the front.
diagnoses plays very quickly.
Exactly.
And when you combine that like with his natural athleticism, he's going to make a ton of plays.
And granted, somebody else makes the play here, but I mean, I feel like he was getting into that hole anyway, and he was going to be able to plug that up if somebody else hadn't. Because he takes on this blocker, but he doesn't let him force him out of. See, he keeps his arm free, and he's getting into the lane. I think Smith would have had that covered had that play gone a little differently.
Yeah, if he had stretched out to the outside a little bit more, he probably gets that.
Exactly. mean, it's just the thing with him taking on blockers that I think people are going to get worked up with the way he can't get off them sometimes, and I do think that is a little bit of a legitimate concern, but
Yeah.
he's not really ever getting forced out of a play entirely, like like we saw with maybe Scooby Wright or someone. He's at least holding his ground at the minimum, so it's kind of just a neutral. He's taking on a blocker.
And most of the time, he doesn't even need to engage head on because he's gonna beat them to their spot.
Yeah, exactly.
But so like it's nice like when he does have to come engage, he's not getting blown up completely.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like, there's going to be so he's people are probably going to get worked up on how well he takes on blocks, but at the same time won't understand that there's so many blocks that he avoided because of how quick he is and how instinctual he is. And I think he's always, from what I've seen, he's always done a very good job at mirroring the quarterback when he tries to scramble and making sure he's doing his job to contain him.
And that's really important with the all these athletic quarterbacks entering the league today. Like
Mm-hmm.
have the ability to spy and good gap discipline and be aware of quarterback movement in the pocket. Those are really big traits today.
Exactly.
Jeez, Devin Gardner is just terrible.
I remember, what was it, I think summer of 2013, we were all giving him hype. It's like he had these awesome tools and he actually looked okay when he was first a quarterback, and then he just kind of sucked after that.
And that's a good play to clean up after the cornerback misses a tackle.
Hmm. Yeah, like you were saying, with his open field tackling, there's not a lot of guys who do it super well. But really, other than that one play, like in the very beginning of the game, he's been outstanding at doing that. Yeah, seeing coverage, you see him get right under the tight end there. He just works to his spot very quickly.
Hmm. And even like he didn't have a big impact on the play, but he rewind that, Matt. But like to have the versatility to line up like near the line of scrimmage, and then like he fakes a blitz, and he's back in his zone as the Gardner is finishing his drop. That's really impressive athleticism right there, and that's
Hmm.
going to give defensive coordinators a little bit more flexibility to show different looks to maybe try to confuse quarterbacks if you know your linebacker can get back in his zone that quickly.
Exactly. And I feel like even though maybe Jaylon Smith uh, isn't the greatest at taking on blockers, he's always very aware of where the play is when he is on a blocker. I feel like we've seen other middling linebackers kind of just take on blocks and then forget about where the play is.
Yeah. He's so aware of like where everything is. Keeps running backs in front of him as he drops. Just
Mhm.
really impressive.
And even on that one play that Gardner tried to scramble and it ended up being a sack, Smith knew exactly when to be able to take off and understand that Gardner was done being able to throw the ball and take off and maybe hope someone was going to fumble, and then he.
Hmm.
That was a very good play by him. It looks like the number 78 there was trying to double team one of the defensive linemen, but Smith ends up shooting that gap so quickly that he has to force, he has to move and take on Jaylon, because if Smith doesn't get taken on there, it looks like he probably makes that play in the backfield.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, 78's trying to double team and he has to shoot off because that running back was wanting that outside lane, and Jaylon shot it so quick and forced the guard to get in the way, and it ended up being, I actually don't even really know if that went anywhere.
Looking at that game, I mean, one thing that I think definitely stood out is after looking at Scooby Wright, I mean, just had 17 tackles in the game we watched, but so much of what Jaylon did isn't showing up in the box score, but was just phenomenal with the way he would close lanes, allowing a teammate to get the tackle for a loss, and all of that. So what were some other takeaways you guys had?
I think the thing for me is like I was kind of saying earlier, like a lot of linebacker prospects are either really good at understanding their assignments or really athletic, and it's really rare that we kind of find these blends. I mean, even I said C.J. Mosley was maybe the best linebacker prospect I've ever seen. He's not a bad athlete, but he's not outstanding. He could have been more athletic. He was maybe a little stiff in his hips. But I think you see Jaylon, and he just moves so fast mentally and physically that
Hmm.
it's really tough for me to see him failing. And I obviously will rank a ton of guys. I've ranked plenty of players very high before, but there's very few players where I've been, 100% sure that they're going to be very, very good. Guys like Teddy Bridgewater was one of them, C.J. Mosley, um, and it's just that I think, like I said with C.J. Mosley last year, I said C.J. Mosley is going to be a top five linebacker in the league in 2, 3 years, and he's already arguably that. Um, I mean, non-pass rushing linebackers at least, and I think Jaylon Smith can certainly earn that kind of ranking as well.
Yep. I completely agree with you. I mean, the only, I mean, there are pretty much like three players in this class that I've seen that I'm like almost convinced will be like really get the next level. That's Jaylon Smith, Hackenberg, and Jalen Ramsey. Like those three guys to me are like the cream of the crop in this class. And I mean, as we saw, Jalen Smith, he's still like when you see him, like he's still kind of got like that teenage body. Like he can
Mm-hmm.
still grow, get bigger, and if he can get bigger and just keep, if he gains the right weight the right way and just keeps his speed, he's gonna end up, he's probably gonna end up ranking in like the top maybe like 4 or 5 players in this class, but he may not get drafted that high just due to like positional value because he's not a great pass rusher, but that's not a knock on him.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's an extremely talented player, and I'm really excited to watch him grow this year.
Yeah, me too. And uh, I haven't seen nearly as many players in this class yet, but kind of like you were saying, two guys I'm very confident being very, very good are Hackenberg and then Jaylon Smith. And I think with Jaylon Smith, you know, as much as I like Hackenberg and think he's going to succeed, and as important as the quarterback position is, at this point I may feel like Jaylon Smith is better at his position. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to rank him higher because obviously, like I said, the quarterback position is more important. But I think if we're talking just in terms of talent and how well they execute their position, Jaylon Smith might be the best player I've seen in this class. And judging by how much I really like him, it's going to be hard for me to see anyone dethroning him off that.
And Charles, just going to, if you were, I mean, you mentioned positional value, and that's why players like, even if they're not as talented, Smith will likely go higher. If you were a GM, you have your quarterback. Is Smith the type of player you would take in the top three?
top 3 if I have my quarterback. Mm. I don't know. Like when was the last time a middle like a non-pass rushing linebacker got taken like that high? If I'm sitting at like 8 through 10, yeah, I think I pulled the trigger. But top 3 in the draft, that's a bit high.
I mean, do we know? Does anyone remember when Patrick Willis was drafted?
He was definitely top 10. I think he
Yeah,
was 8th overall that year. He was after that was like the year Adrian Peterson got drafted, right?
I'm not sure.
I'm looking it up. Willis was the 11th pick in the draft.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I think that's a fair range for him.
Yeah, I'm not sure the last time a non-pass rushing linebacker went that high. The thing is, if you're picking top 3, the thing about building a team is that you have to have your quarterback, you have to have people that get at the quarterback, and you have to have people that protect your quarterback. If you're picking top 3, you have a gap somewhere on one of those 3 problems. So I think that's where you need to pick.
Yep.
And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. The game's centered around the quarterback. So you got to have one protect when to get after it. So he's not like one of these pass rushing linebackers, but that doesn't diminish his value in any way. It's just going to impact, where he gets drafted next year.
And before we wrap up, any parting thoughts?
No. Oh, I finally broke the 1,000 followers club today, so that's kind of neat.
Oh, that's true. I think I actually missed that.
And coming up in the future, we're going to be doing one for another quarterback, Wentz, and just everyone. Be sure to follow Charles on Twitter at MCDraft2. Obviously, he just broke the 1,000 barrier mark for followers, and he just wrote an outstanding piece on Wentz. So just be sure to check it out. Share it to Draft Twitter. Everyone, just share it. Outstanding work by Charles. Be sure to follow him, and of course, be checking out the work that Derek is doing as well. And that will wrap it up from the lens. Jaylon Smith, as mentioned, coming future will be Wentz. So I want to thank everyone for listening.